Hi guys, this is Nadia Andreeva from spinachandyoga.com, and this is a series of Happy Belly interviews to celebrate the launch of my book, Happy Belly. And I'm interviewing various experts, Ayurvedic experts, wellness experts, chefs, and just people that I really admire to bring you the knowledge about digestive system and healing your body. And today we have a woman that I really admire, that I interviewed already several times, and her name is Myra Lewin. Myra is the founder of Halipuli Ayurveda and Yoga. She's from Hawaiian island, Kauai. She's an Ayurvedic practitioner since 1999 and a yoga teacher trainer. Myra has authored 2 Ayurvedic health books, Freedom in Your Relationship with Food and Simple Ayurvedic Recipes. Having healed herself from leukemia and rheumatoid arthritis, Myra now guides others to harness the power of Ayurveda and yoga with the goal of connecting with their spiritual selves always in mind. So thank you, Myra, for joining us.
Sure, yeah. Lovely to be here.
Yeah. So the question that I always ask, and I know for Ayurveda people it's a little bit broader than for regular people, but what does a happy belly mean for you?
Well, a happy belly for me means that I feel well, that there's no symptoms of bloating and gas and discomfort, that I have a feeling of being energetic and grounded and content after I eat a meal. And so, that notion of letting the process happen and not having some kind of real big difficulty afterwards. That was a big step for me. And so having a happy belly just means that I really feel well overall too, because it affects everything.
Well, yeah, in an Ayurveda, digestion and Agni is connected with everything from your energy level to your metabolism to basically kind of like energy in every single cell in your body.
Yes, exactly. And so when that Agni, or our digestive fire, is weak, then it doesn't go well for me. And I, have had a weaker digestion and a weaker Agni in my life. So
how did you know? Like, how did it show up that you had a weaker digestion system?
It showed up in having gas and bloating often. I had a pattern of constipation and diarrhea that would just sort of cycle through, and especially around my menstrual cycle. And so it just was this sort of continuous thing. Even as for many years, I tried to get it better before I came to Ayurveda, and it got a little bit better, but it still had these cycles. And it was associated with things that I was doing and I didn't understand at the time.
Okay.
And
let's dive deeper into those things that you didn't understand, but now you do, so you have the capacity to teach and guide others. What were some things that you noticed made a big difference for you into a positive side? Like, what started making your belly happy?
Okay. Well, the first things were when I first started to eat food that, I would find what agreed with me or not. Mm-hmm. And then I still wanted those things, though, that didn't agree with me. And I kept doing those things, too, and sort of blaming everything else. But what I was able to do was to stop overeating. That was a big one. And that took me a long time.
How did you do it? Because I think a lot of people do it.
Yes. I kidded myself about it for years. I heard about that if you stop eating at your first burp, that you wouldn't overeat then, that you would never get to that place. And I didn't honor it for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I continued to have problems, And so finally I started doing that. I stopped eating at the first burp. And it was a process that it took for me to be able to even out my eating again. And my mind had to get used to eating a whole lot less at first. Uh-huh. And then it adjusted back to a really regular place. But that has made a huge difference. The other one for me was chewing my food. I mean, these are really simple things, but I didn't. I was just in such a hurry, and And I wanted to get more food in a lot of the time, and I really wanted to get on to doing the next thing in my life, and had forgotten the importance of food. And then, somebody said to me when I first came to Ayurveda and said, well, if you think you have enzyme problems, then you're taking enzymes, but if you chew your food, then the enzymes will be able to work in your mouth and start that process, and it will be a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, gradually, I started doing that, and it did get better. Yeah. And so it still took me a while, though. I mean, yeah.
Those things are so simple, but at the same time, there's a huge component of kind of taking the responsibility and recognizing it's something that I'm doing wrong, not necessarily something that's an outside influence that I need to correct. And I think that's a huge step, because it's kind of like recognizing almost your own fault, and it's a little bit painful.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It's not saying like the food that I'm getting is bad. It's more.
That's right. Right. Or I can't digest that one particular food. That's what I always do. Oh, well, this is the problem, or whatever. And
so this whole burping thing is just fascinating for me. And we spoke about it in a previous interview. But is it a loud burp that you're looking for? Is it a soft burp? How would exactly somebody know? Because most
actually,
people, you ask them, they'll be like, I never burp.
Right. Especially those of us who eat really fast.
Yeah.
And so it's really just a movement. It might be just a little bit of a, that kind of a thing. And that's enough. But now I find that, as I'm calmer when I start eating and through the process, then it comes to a place where I know it's coming. I can feel it coming. And so I just sit and relax, and it comes.
Okay.
So, yes, yeah. It's kind of like, when you burp the baby,
yeah.
If you're really gentle and just let them get there, it happens.
So basically, it's becoming really attuned with your body, which brings us back to knowing how to listen to your body.
Yes, it really does. It is. It's, you were talking about the fault and responsibility. It really is just recognizing that our body is our gift in this life, and so we need to just pay attention to what's going on with it and take care of it that way.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of control that a lot of us have been raised to think that we don't have that control.
Yeah, so true. So if somebody is eating super fast, and they're eating in front of a computer or the desk or with a phone, and it's more just one of those things that they kind of have to do to get through the day, how did you start changing it in your life? Because you mentioned also that you wanted to get on to the next thing, and eating was just something that needed to be done. How do you change that pattern? Because I feel like it's so ingrained in our culture.
It is. There's an internal decision, and then I started making sure that, for example, I kept my phone away from the table. And sometimes I would go outside or go somewhere different to sit and eat if I wasn't having it, if there was, if the computer was in the same room with the dining table or something. So those things helped. But the other thing that really helped me was to decide to start saying a prayer or some kind of acknowledgement of the food in advance. And so when I did that, that at the beginning, I did that. That was great. That helped. But I would still get up. I'd answer the phone. If the phone rang during that time, then I would get up and stop. And now I don't. I pretty much let people know that not during this, 15 to 30 minutes, that this isn't going to happen. And, I for the longest time, I thought, I can't be away from it and that. But then I found out that I really could.
Yeah.
So
that the world doesn't fall apart if you take half an hour.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And also stepping outside or to a different location, I think really helps too. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that it's basically a commitment to yourself, committing to time to yourself, and being in integrity with your own body. So, because in reality, there's no way to cheat your body, there's no way to hide from yourself. So, if there's something that you're kind of doing, but at the same time, you're not doing because you still have your phone or computer next to you, your body will show it in terms of bloating or constipation or just feeling unwell after eating.
That's right. Yes. Yeah, that was definitely my experience. I would, I would eat and I would feel satiated, but because I really still wasn't digesting the food that well, then I'd also, an hour later, I'd get hungry again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, that whole process didn't take place as well as it needed to. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the difference between full, satisfied, and nourished.
Oh, yes. Okay.
What do you think is the difference? Can we actually feel nourished by eating a certain number of proteins, carbs, and minerals, or is there something more to it?
Well, we feel nourished, yes, when we have those components that you mentioned, but we really feel nourished when, number one, when our Agni is working, our digestive fire is working, but also when we really allow ourselves to receive what the food has to offer. If that, well, I'll call spiritual component, but if that component's not there, if my heart isn't at least a little bit soft and open, then the body is tense, and when the body's tense, we don't digest food well at all. So it's really a matter of our allowing ourselves to receive what the food has to offer. And so I think that's really just as important a component. So, for example, many years ago, I would be angry often, and I'd sit down to the table, trying to do the right thing, but I would be angry, and then the food wasn't going to get digested that well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something that comes to my mind, which I think would make things a little bit easier for people, is when they're thinking of receiving something from a meal, would it be helpful for them to know exactly what they're receiving from food or from something, like saying that I'm eating carrots, so I'm receiving vitamin A?
Yeah. Well, for some people's minds, that might be helpful. I think that if we can start to think about the life force in things, because the life force is really made up of, you could say that it's all the cells and the molecules and that come together that create life force on the planet and then within us. And so that's really what we're looking for, to receive the life force. Some people might feel that if you rub their hands together a little bit and just sort of feel the energy of the food. That's kind of fun and really helpful. And then the other is to really utilize all five senses as much as possible with the eating process. So for me, it's not just the taste. I really like the smell of things, and I love to hear the sound of the food being cooked or prepared. Yeah. So,
that's really great.
Yeah.
So, what are some specific foods that you noticed that were really easy on your digestion when you started improving your digestion with Ayurveda?
Okay. Well, things that were really easy that I hadn't eaten very much of were augmenting vegetables, or vegetables that had the sweet taste. So things like squash and sweet potatoes and even beets that are not something that I had eaten much at all. And so those were things that I was able to. I got a lot of satisfaction from them because they have that sweet taste. But and then they also were grounding, which I also needed. So those were some helpful things. And the other one was that, I know it's not popular these days, but I learned that eating white basmati rice, or white jasmine even, was something that would help my digestion when it was really weak. And then other time, that I didn't have to just eat only brown rice, that I could do some of both. Yeah. And the other thing too is I learned about some other grains too that were helpful to me.
What are some other favorite grains for you?
I like barley, yeah, and And I like teff, which is an African grain, very tiny
Yes, similar
grain.
to amaranth, right?
Similar, yeah, but it's a little bit fuller than amaranth.
Uh-huh.
So you can actually have it on its own,
Okay.
and also it does nicely with other grains. So, and
Okay.
I'd had it the first time actually in Egypt, and thought that what an incredible thing it was. And so it's nice that we're able to get it now in
Yeah.
North America.
So, what were some foods that you had to let go of because they weren't making your digestion happy?
Ooh, there were a few. I had a few
Okay.
significant ones, yeah. Because when I came back from India and had been introduced, where I was open to Ayurveda, I connected with a practitioner, and I said, she asked me what I ate, and I said, I eat all these things, and I eat tomatoes every single day. And I had pretty significant digestive problems, and I ate a lot of tomatoes
Uh-huh.
actually, and had all my life. And she said, well, maybe you ought to consider leaving those out and see what happens. And that made a huge difference. I mean, I took a jump in my energy level incredibly just by leaving them out. And then now, I could have them occasionally, but I am not so attracted to them because I don't like the way they make me feel.
Yeah.
But garlic was another one. I ate tons of garlic. Every day, at least 2 meals a day. And so taking that irritant, because it is an irritant, and
Yeah.
out of my system, it was another one where, I was trying to do everything really right and trying to do well, and that made such a difference. But it was an adjustment because, my taste buds were used to the strong taste, and so, now I find it a little bit insulting if it's really a tiny amount in some food in the background. I think it's fine. I could
Yeah.
enjoy it. Yeah.
And
So
it's so interesting. Even modern functional medicine practitioners, they usually say that the foods that we can't imagine our life without, that we're really attached, those are usually the foods that we have the most problem with.
yes, yes. Yeah, I didn't hear that at first when I started, but I'm so glad that I did finally, because that's really what has made a lot of an enormous difference. Yes.
Yeah. So, what was the process of finding that non-attachment? Was that just the belief that somebody knows better what's better for you than you do? How did you go through this process of like, it's a vegetable, why would it be hurting me?
Yes. Right. 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 It was a process of looking at the emotions around it and having people repeatedly say to me, if you have that much charge on it, or you're so think you can't live without it. And, it was a process for me to come to a place of understanding that my strong likes and dislikes weren't making me stronger in life. And I thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, that represented strength. So the process was trying some things and seeing the change. So I had to open up my mind enough, and it took, like I said, it took me a while. But once I did, and I started making that connection between what I was doing and the results I was getting, then that's when I could start to inch my way. And then actually, it was from the yogic teachings talks about our shaving off our extreme likes and dislikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really like it. I think all our attachments definitely have something to teach us.
Yeah.
So, what are some practices, or like it seems that a lot of the things that you did to improve your digestion were connected with the emotions and mind, like the thought
Mm-hmm.
process. It wasn't just changing the food, it was also analyzing the emotions behind it.
Right.
How can somebody start looking at that? Where do they start? If we're not going into specifics, like, okay, this is the diet, like take out gluten, take out dairy, and you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
But something on a more personal level, because for everyone it's going to be different trigger foods, and they kind of need to create this intuitive food map for themselves. How do we do that?
Well, I think that it's important first for someone to just get an idea of, an honest idea of how much charge they have around the process of eating.
Okay.
In other words, sitting down to the dining table for some people is a great, relaxing, wonderful thing, and for some people it's not. And so first, I think recognizing that, and then seeing what steps you might do that can help you sit down and start the process from a more enjoyable place or from a more relaxed place. Sometimes it's just taking a few breaths, sometimes the prayer, those kinds of things. I think that's a really good place to start. I loved having people come to dinner at my house, and for many, many years, or 20 years, I had monthly potlucks at my house. And I would get and I realized this was a good lesson for me, I would get so nervous about it. And, all those reasons that we think of, is it going to go okay? Are they going to like the food I ate or that I prepared and that? And so it was quite a process for me to learn how to not eat too fast. That's why I would eat fast and not feel well afterwards. So I think that, picking a couple of situations that you can really let yourself, take a step back and step into it in a more calm way. Yeah.
I love that. I really like your approach of slowing down and listening to yourself. On a more physical note, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about lentils, and even small ones like moon beans, because I feel that in the modern world they're getting a bad rap for kind of causing gas and bloating. So a lot of people avoid them. But at the same time, in Ayurveda, those were preferred as one of the easier to digest foods. So I feel like, and I personally had an experience where I didn't feel good after eating lentils. But at the same time, I know that it really depends on how you prepare them. So give us a little bit of a idea of somebody who is willing to try cooking either moon beans or small lentils in an Ayurvedic way. What do they need to make it happen?
Okay. Well, one of the things that is about all of the legumes or lentils and beans and that is that they're extractive in nature. So whatever is sitting in your intestines, it's going to start drawing it out. So if you already have a situation of indigestion and some gas in there, then you eat the beans in there or the lentils and it's going to start pushing that out. So you're going to start experiencing it. And that's why sometimes people, they say, sometimes I can eat them and sometimes I can't. Well, because it's also affected by the condition of the intestines, at the time that meal goes in. But the split mung is especially, or the whole mung, but the split mung is especially easy to digest. And so it's a really nice place to start. And I suggest starting with a really soup of it, basically, so that it's thin. And put it in combination, with something that's augmenting or something that's more grounding as well.
Like butternut squash?
Like butternut squash, for example, or spaghetti squash, or one of those. Yes, exactly. And also not to have too much, that you have about 40% of what's happening in the meal would be maybe some dark leafy greens and the mung and the split mung soup. And so I would start with that, and also using some spices then to digest, to assist the digestion and also to complement the taste as well. So a little bit of fresh ginger, some turmeric, and some cumin is sort of a traditional way. But also fennel is also another nice one that people enjoy the taste of, and also helps with the digestion.
Great.
Yeah, so they're wonderful, and so you're right. I agree. They're getting a bad rap a lot these days.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your tips. If people want to come to Hawaii for an Ayurveda and yoga vacation, or learn more about your work, where can they find you?
They can find us at halepule.com. That's HALEPULE.com. It means house of prayer.
Wonderful. And guys, make sure to subscribe so you can see all other Happy Belly interviews and get the book on Amazon because it has tons of useful information, and you also get lots of downloads for free when you get the book. I'll see you in the next interview.